Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. This is the Design Thinking Show. Today, we're talking with Cary Breese, who is the co-founder and CEO at NowRx. Welcome to the show, Cary. Good to have you.
Thanks, Tullio. Great to be here.
So Cary's interrupting or disrupting the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmacy space, and we're going to learn about that and see what we can glean from the conversation. And we're very curious to learn how NowRx has applied design thinking and how they've developed a go-to-market strategy, how they're solving problems that better serve people. So we're looking forward to what we can learn from that. So stay with us in this 20 to 25-minute journey. But before we dive into that and see what we can learn, let's get to know Cary a little bit. Cary, if you could kindly introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dig in and see what NowRx is all about.
Yeah, thank you. So my background is quite varied. I look at myself as part engineer. I have an engineering degree from Drexel University in Philadelphia, born and raised on the East Coast. But I also am part finance person. I left engineering after about 4 or 5 years and got interested in finance and became an actuary for an insurance company, Cigna Insurance Company in Philadelphia. And the transition was actually pretty smooth. I was interested in finance, and actuarial departments at insurance companies look for people that are good in math and good in probability and statistics and modeling. And so I got hired right into Cigna's actuarial program. And it was great for me because I also have always been sort of entrepreneurial. And so the actuarial program at Cigna, they rotate you around from business unit to business unit, teaching the actuaries about how to model and understand businesses from a data perspective. So I'm sort of a finance engineer as well as technical engineer. And I think it served me well throughout my career. I've done a few entrepreneurial things. One was in the insurance industry. I started a company called Trafalgar Insurance, and we built some automation tools for automating underwriting and quoting and parts of insurance processes like loss control. And I built that company up over 7 years and then sold it to a large regional player called Arrowhead General. And so I've been doing entrepreneurial stuff. Love innovation, have all my life. My dad was an engineer, always like inventing and looking for better ways to do things.
Awesome. You know, not a lot of people think of engineers as artists, but in a way you kind of are. And you're painting something possible, right? Solving problems. So we're looking forward to seeing what you're doing here with NowRx. Tell us about NowRx. What was the ha-ha moment that made you decide we should do this?
Yeah, you know, you're so right about the creative side of engineering. I always think that's a really big part of engineering is, you know, thinking outside the box and using some creativity. So I had done another startup company that we ended up winding down after 2 or 3 years. Just, you know, got some good customer traction, but not enough to really get escape velocity. So we started setting our eyes on another opportunity. This is my co-founder, Sumit Shokand, and we had both worked on this other company that was building a way to automate launching applications in cloud environments. So I'm a big guy on automation and streamlining things, especially legacy industries. And, you know, my background at the insurance company level and in healthcare got me interested in doing something in healthcare. And we started brainstorming ideas. And over a few weeks, we were whiteboarding out ideas and thinking about areas where we could bring automation and innovation into legacy companies. And I just went to the pharmacy during that period of time, sort of a real fertile moment in my life in terms of idea creation. And I went to the pharmacy and, you know, I went to the doctor for a sore knee. I went to the pharmacy carrying a piece of paper in my hands. And I stood in a line for 20 minutes, and I called my co-founder Sumit on the way outside of that pharmacy saying, what's wrong with this picture? How come no one's fixed this problem? Why can't I just go to the doctor, go back to work, go home, and have that medication delivered like I can with everything else in our society, right? I can have a car pull up in 2 minutes, take me wherever I want. I can have my lunch delivered within an hour. I can have my groceries delivered right to my house. Why are we all standing in line at pharmacy? And that was really the aha moment. And the vision was just that. I want pharmacy to be as simple as hitting a button on your app and having your medication show up at your house or office and go about your day.
Brilliant. All right. So let's go right into what we're talking about today. We're talking about the tech-powered pharmacy of the future. And the question we're going to answer through a series of conversational questions is, can technology-powered operations inside retail pharmacies drive better user experience and health outcomes for patients? So let's see if we can answer that question. We're going to use 7 questions. Nothing like answer a question with more questions, right? We're going to use 7 questions to help us guide this conversation today on how you guys have applied design thinking methodology to solve that problem, to see how technology can power operations inside a retail pharmacy to drive better user experiences. So the first question we're going to go into, let's kick this right off, is what methodologies were used, for example, to develop the company's go-to-market strategy? The moment you guys had, what's wrong with this picture, what did you kind of go from the idea to developing a strategy to go to market? What methodology did you guys use to do that?
Yeah, well, I am a big believer in not just design thinking, but lean startup as well, which I think is related and in that same vein. And the first thing I did, honestly, was I went back to that pharmacy where I got that first, experience that kind of gave me the idea. And I started talking to customers in line at the pharmacy because I'm a big believer in getting that customer feedback right away. And if you could have seen me, Tullio, I was buying things off the shelf or acting like I was going to buy things off the shelf. I was grabbing like mouthwash and things off the shelf and standing in line at the pharmacy. And then I would strike up conversations with strangers that were also standing in line. And I wanted to understand how people would react to the idea of a delivery pharmacy, because it didn't exist at the time, fairly new concept. I thought it was a great idea, but I wanted to validate that with actual customers that could be potential customers going forward. And I had a goal in my mind to talk to 25 customers, and it took me about 3 or 4 evenings of standing in line at the local CVS. And I learned a lot from that. I got some feedback, and I found out not everybody trusts the idea of a delivery pharmacy. It's a very new concept, and some people thought that was really kind of a strange thing. How would it work? How would the prescription get to this new pharmacy? How would the deliveries work? How would my doctor know about it? And would the medications be secure? And all of those questions came up in those really first early conversations, and that started to drive the design of the product and our go-to-market strategy.
I love it. Lean Canvas is definitely one of the key methodologies for design thinking. It sounds like you were doing research and testing all at the same time, 2 of the 4 phases of design thinking. Love hearing the stories of, having an idea, but then having the real feedback from people inform how you should proceed forward. It sounds as though you guys learned a lot from that. So how do you codify as a company this idea of fostering innovation? How does the company foster innovation? From that learning, what have you guys applied moving forward into getting you where you are now?
I think there's 2 big keys to fostering innovation from my perspective and my personal experience. Number 1, we make sure every employee at NowRx is a shareholder. Everyone gets stock options when they're hired into the company. They're all owners of the company. And I think that's really important to align interests, to not just come into work and do your job and have fun while you're doing it, but also have an opportunity to participate economically in making the company better and looking for ways that things can be better. So that's number 1. And I'm a big believer in that. We have a lot of delivery personnel that are our employees. We have pharmacy technicians, pharmacists. These are not people that ordinarily, go into the startup world like developers do. We have developers too, but even our drivers, all of throughout the entire company, drivers, technicians, pharmacists, they all own a piece of the company. Number two, we try to remove any fear of getting in trouble for making a mistake. I'm a big believer in developing a culture of fixing problems, identifying problems, but not for the purposes of blaming anyone, right? We all make mistakes. Things happen. Some customer has a bad experience. It's going to happen to everyone. And rather than dwell or even really focus at all on what person maybe was at fault, what process was at fault, what system was at fault, are there more systems and processes that we can create to prevent that problem from happening if another person maybe makes a mistake or something similar. And so I think those are the two ingredients that I try to focus on, is creating a culture where people are not blamed for mistakes or bad results. It's going to happen. And number two, make sure everyone's an equity player in the company.
I love that. I think a lot of companies who don't share the co-ownership of the company are doing themselves an injustice. It's hard to get people to collaborate and even argue to get to the truth if they're not operating as co-owners. So congratulations on that. Let's continue forward. Curious a little bit more about the customer, the people that are actually the end users or the patient, if you will. How does the company design processes in support of delivering end user value? I heard you guys are very big on let's systematically solve what's broken by looking at processes. How does that apply in terms of the customers themselves, the people that are actually adopting this new approach to delivering basically medicine to their home?
Right. So, I mean, if you have the first two ingredients, right, where people want to make the company better and they're not afraid to get in trouble if a mistake happens, let's say, if you have that foundation, what we've been able to do is we have a weekly team meeting. It's cross-functional across all different parts of the organization, delivery department, dispatch, the pharmacy team, as well as the development team. We get together and we review on a weekly basis. We review all of the customer experiences that we're aware of, that we become aware of, that were less than ideal, right? So you have to have the foundation of people not wanting to get in trouble, not worrying about that, to report all that information. So anytime, we have a message from maybe a physician that we work with that knows us, or a customer gives us feedback either via text or phone, or we missed a delivery, or a variety of things that may happen throughout the day, we accumulate all of those reports. We discuss it as a cross-functional team once a week from all parties, and we develop again, systems and processes that we can innovate to help prevent similar situations and always move the needle, always raise the bar with our SLA and with our customer experience. We're huge believers in the customer experience and leading with that as we go to market.
You said something really interesting. So, let's say you're in the customer success part of the company, and part of your metrics is the satisfaction level, perhaps it's a SAT score that you're striving for. So revealing a problem could be contrary to achieving the SAT score you're trying to achieve, or a level of perceived satisfaction from the end user. I love this concept and how it ties in together, that, rewarding being okay with revealing what's broken, because you don't get to improve things unless you do that. It reminds me, like, I learned a while ago, even with my own kids, instead of asking, how did your day go today? I often will say, what did you screw up today? And what did you learn from that? Right.
That's great.
And so I love this idea of actively looking for what's broken and bubbling it up, because that's part of designing better outcomes for everybody involved. So congratulations on that. Let's 100%. Continue on with the next question. And the next question is, How do you go about putting people's needs as the focal point of the product roadmap? Sometimes you always have to balance the investors and the board pushing for certain things and what actually is needed for the end user or the customer. So how do you guys balance that and make the product roadmap focused on the people's needs first and foremost? Can you share some of those thoughts with us?
Yeah, I think balance is the key here. I think, and you discussed it and touched on it. I do think the reality is we have to balance how we develop the company to be a successful company, which could include, how we present to investors and shareholders, and so that has to be balanced with also the core component of how the processes and product and service affect customer lives, consumer lives. We certainly do like to prioritize the consumer experience. And I think the way to do that from an organizational level is to have really strong product management, have a responsible individual or more than one that really take ownership of that product management, and have a person that is guided and has the experience to really focus on customer needs. And if you can protect that product manager and they can just focus on that part of it, the other members of the leadership team can focus on the other part of that balance, which is, presenting the company to investors. But you do need product management that is isolated from some of those other concerns and just focused on customer experience.
I'm curious, Cary, your experience with some of the folks that are owning the product roadmap. How does empathy come into play in their ability to execute on their roles? Is this something that comes up as a conversation piece inside the organization? What are your thoughts on that?
Empathy is huge. We may not always articulate it exactly that way, but I try to put people inside the head of the customer. That's what I try to do. Steve Jobs was always really good at that. Putting yourself inside, really visualizing yourself sitting in a doctor's office or in a line at a pharmacy or at home or at work, and trying to get through your day while you're getting prescription medications. The more you can really visualize that experience from a customer perspective, the better. So empathy is a huge part of that. I probably don't talk about it enough in that terminology, but I'm going to start now that you mentioned that, because I think that's key.
Yes, it's a cornerstone of the modern design thinking methodology for sure. All right, let's continue on with the next question. What are some of the lessons learned in the process of aligning market needs while differentiating from competitors? Now, sometimes you create something, there's an absolute need, but you also have the pressures of competitors. So what do you guys learned? What lessons have you learned in how to properly align those needs and also differentiating yourself?
I think lessons learned are sometimes a little painful, right? And one of the things that I've had to just confront and be at peace with is everything that we're talking about so far is the right way to go. And if you can motivate people on the team to think that way as well, boy, great things are going to start happening. And we've certainly seen a lot of that in our experience with NowRx. The growth has just been really rewarding to see, and the feedback from the customers gets better and better. But the lesson I learned is that as hard as you try to build that culture, not everyone's going to be on board. Not every individual in an organization is going to share that same kind of design thinking and philosophy, or certainly it can be mixed, right? And I think I've come to learn that that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's not a perfect world. A lot of people have different strengths and a variety of personalities. And certainly in our business, again, we have not just developers who are sort of innately innovative, but we have, pharmacy technicians and pharmacists and and delivery personnel. Not all of them are going to be really, as far into the design thinking thought process as, say, one of our developers might be. So I think that's a lesson learned and something I've grown okay with over time. You take your wins where you can, and understand that everyone has something to add to the organization, and there can be a variety in how people approach their job, and that's okay.
Interesting. I think you touched a little bit on the next question, but I'll see if we can explore it a little more. The lessons the company has learned in the process of creating an innovation-driven culture. What I heard is sometimes you have to be okay with some people with doing what is good enough. Maybe they don't fully buy into or drink the Kool-Aid, but what they're doing is good enough. So, but how do you still drive an innovative culture? How do you extract innovation even out of those folks who may not drink the Kool-Aid every day? So what have you learned to balance that out?
You got to just keep trying. As CEO, I'm the one in charge of developing the culture and promoting a culture throughout the organization. And you have to understand you won't reach everyone in the company. We're over 110 employees now. You can't reach everyone to the same degree. But you should also have a process improvement plan in place for employees. Maybe some employees are struggling in certain ways, and even in that communication from managers to employees and team leaders to their teams, you have to always continue to have that communication about what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. So you keep the vision and the communication across the organization consistent. It does permeate through the organization. You can't let perfect be the enemy of the good, though. Yeah, you have to allow for some variety and variation there. And that's okay. Just keep trying, keep promoting the message. The more you foster it and bring in people that can take on that message themselves and spread it out through the organization, the better you will be. But at the end of the day, Tullio, I think it's just a never-ending effort. I was going to say battle, but it's not really a battle. It's fun. It's kind of the lifeblood of a company and an organization. And developing the culture is something I really enjoy. So it's not really a battle. It's just it's a passion, and you have to bring that every day and get that message out. And I found that most people will get on board and will understand what the vision is if you've painted it clearly enough, and they'll understand the benefits of what you're talking about, thinking in certain patterns, and most people will get on board. And it's been a fun ride so far, and I'll just keep trying to get to everyone I can going forward.
Just like anything else, right? You're trying to figure out how to solve the problem in the marketplace. Internally, sometimes you discover there's fears, there's limitations, there's traumas, all kinds of things that hold people back from moving forward. And those are the opportunities to help people grow. So congratulations for continuing to push that forward. It'll pay off big dividends. Final question today before we wrap up. If you had to do it all over again, Cary, what would you do more of? Not different, more of.
Yeah, I think, I'm pretty proud of spending some time early in the earliest days of the company, just when it was a simple idea. I'm pretty proud of how I did have the discipline to get customer feedback, but I think I would have done even more of it. Even those early learnings in the first few days of the concept have still held true to this day, 6 years later. So that feedback was incredibly accurate and spot on. And, I think you just need to hear as much of that as you can. Any entrepreneur out there who might be listening, you just always have a sense of what it comes from your own perspective and your own thinking. And so it seems like a fantastic notion or design, but that's in your own head. and you're a unique individual, and you need to get out there and talk to and listen to large numbers of other people, because they're all individuals, and you'll find out information just from conversations and prototyping and feedback. We did a lot of prototyping in the beginning as well. We focused really on functionality rather than prettiness, and I think that ended up bearing out well. And it came, from that drive to just want to solve problems for customers and really address their feedback. So, it sounds like I'm just kind of playing into your design thinking theme, but really, I honestly would have done more. I would have done more of that in the earliest days.
Well, thanks for sharing with that with us very vulnerably. I mean, listening is a key component to design thinking, and listening without a narrative is very challenging, right? Because most companies will go in with a narrative and they try to validate that narrative. But listening without the narrative sometimes really opens up to seeing and hearing what needs to happen to better align. So congratulations for having done that. Encourage you to keep doing that as you have encouraged others to do it. That wraps up our conversation today. It was great to have you on the show. Learned a lot, learned the value of listening and talking to customers, and applying, empathy in everything that we do. And more importantly, not giving up on people. Keep pushing, keep striving to get people on board with the vision. And the key to having people participate as co-owners into that vision is so important, to get everybody to be able to go through the challenges of the arguments or the mistakes that inevitably occur, and how to overcome them as a team. So thanks for sharing all that with us today. Stay with me just as we go off the air in just a second. This is the last show for this week on Dojo Live. We will have a restream later today and probably tomorrow. But come back Monday at 12 o'clock Pacific for the recap show. We're going to recap this week's shows and announce what's coming up for next week. We will have several shows next week live. So come join us. Dojo.live is the URL. It's that simple. Have a great rest of your week.